Hi everybody, it's Keelin here from Threshold Training Network, and in today's Grow into March we're going to be discussing the GROW model of coaching. So when we get started setting goals, it's really important that we have a framework for setting those goals, because what can happen is when we're kind of getting started, we may be very vague about the goal, and then we might not even know how to achieve it. We might bite off more than we can chew. So it's very important to kind of break the goal down into bite-sized pieces. So that will kind of ensure our success on the path to achieving our goal. So the first part of the GROW model is G for goal. So I'm going to ask you two kind of questions today to reflect on this part of the GROW model. So when we're kind of getting started off setting goals, it's good to ask ourselves, what do I want specifically? So when a lot of people set goals, they may be very vague about the goal. So they may say something like, I want to exercise more. And that's a bit tricky because it hasn't really broken down what you want to do. So taking that kind of example, I want to exercise more, instead of just writing that, it might be more helpful to write something like, I want to do 20 minutes of running 3 times this week from, this Sunday to next Sunday, and kind of put the date on it. And in that way, you've kind of broken down what needs to be done. You've set a time for the goal to be achieved in, and you've kind of made it very measurable. So that will kind of give you that real sense of achievement. So if you do go out that hour of running that week, you can tick that off the list and it's done. Whereas exercise more, that can't really be measured. So it's really important that we can be very specific when we're setting our goals. Another thing where people go wrong when they're setting goals is they might write the goal in a really self-defeating way. A typical one that's kind of coming to mind is around weight loss. So people might write, I want to lose weight because I'm fat. And that's just not a really nice way to talk about yourself. Maybe something like, I'd like to lose 10 pounds by June because I want to be healthier, is a more helpful way of framing that goal. So another question that we need to write it in a way that's motivating. So when you look at it on the piece of paper, you feel motivated and you feel like you want to do it and you feel encouraged. It's really important, we get more with honey than we do with vinegar. And how we talk to ourselves is so important when we're setting goals. We want to be as kind and compassionate to ourselves as possible because we'll get more done that way. If you kind of think about it, when you're training an animal, say if you're training a dog, when the dog sits, you give it treats, and that gets a great response as opposed to yelling at the dog. So it's really important that we kind of give ourselves treats and give ourselves rewards for kind of executing new behaviors. So the second question that I'd like everyone to reflect on is, why do I want it? So why do I want this goal? Why is it important to me? So it's really important that we find out why the goal is important to us before we start kind of activating the new behaviors. So again, kind of coming back to the weight loss one, because it's one as a coach I get all the time. If I can think back over the last 5 years, it's just a really common one where I just find people get really stuck. So, someone might come to me and they'll be like, I want to lose 30 pounds. And I'll kind of say the magic wand question. Okay, so I have my magic wand. Ta-da, you've lost 30 pounds. So now that you've lost that 30 pounds, how would you treat yourself? How would you treat others? And how would you treat the wider world around you? And a lot of the time, people actually just say to me like, oh, well, I feel like I'd really love myself if I was 30 pounds lighter. And no, it's not really. I think having a healthy relationship and loving yourself is a little bit deeper than, goes a little deeper than how we look. So, you know, sometimes I might pick at that a bit more, and if the person actually says that they're overweight and they feel like it's loving and nourishing to get down to a healthy weight, then I'll say, yes, that's perfect. But if someone's kind of saying to me that they'll expect to have self-love just from losing pounds, that's not really achievable. Loving yourself goes a lot deeper than that. So also kind of when we're kind of, you know, especially with the losing weight one as well, what I kind of find is people might say, oh, I'll have more self-respect if I lose weight. And then they'll kind of go through the weight loss program with me, and it may be eating like 10 pieces of celery a day or something like that, you know, like a fad diet. And I'd have to ask the question, is actually undereating and malnourishing yourself, that's actually not a form of self-respect. So what would be a more helpful thing to do? So just kind of to keep that in mind, just to make sure that what you want to achieve doesn't contradict the value of what you want to do. So if your goal is to be more loving towards yourself, and yes, if you want to lose weight, that's fine, but actually how could you do that in a loving way, in a nourishing way that nurtures your body, as opposed to starving yourself? And I would kind of be saying to someone, maybe with that weight loss goal, you know, what other things you could do to be loving to yourself? How could you treat yourself in a loving manner? And another really great thing about the value system is sometimes we don't always reach our goals. You know, goals, you know, the difference between values and goals is, you know, on a sheet of paper, you can tick a box, I've done that. But a lot of people, they reach their goals without ever actually using their values. So a good example of this would be marriage. You know, a lot of people say, oh, I want to get married. And you can tick that off on a box, yes, I'm married. But actually, if your value is being loving, you know, you can get into relationships that aren't loving. So you could do, you know, have marriage number 1, marriage number 2, marriage number 4, marriage number 5. And you could keep ticking the box of the goal, yeah, I'm married. But actually, you could get married and not be loving. So actually, the value under that hasn't been upheld. And also a lot of people think, you know, that they need a partner to be loving. But actually, you could go and never have an intimate relationship and still act out that value of being loving. So sometimes people get caught up in not having something to achieve the value, when actually you could be loving to a pet, you could be loving to your neighbor, you could be loving to your family members. You don't have to have a partner to be loving. So sometimes actually we can fall into that trap and we can say, okay, when actually I have a partner, I'll be loving. When actually what I'd say to someone is, just go and be loving today. When you see people on the street that you know, wave at them, act caring towards yourself, act caring towards other people that you come across. So kind of reflecting on those two questions. So what do you want specifically? And get really into the detail of it. What it is, how you'll measure it, and when do you want to achieve it? And then secondly, why do you want this goal? So what's the value behind the goal? Is it to connect you to being more loving? Is it to connect you to kind of a sense of humor? Is it to connect you to determination? Just kind of finding out what the value is behind that and kind of linking it to the goal. And I think that will go a long way in getting started. So that is all for today. And when I see you next week, I will be discussing the second part of the GROW model, which is reality. So take care, everyone, and have a good weekend.